What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our college football channel. A crazy weekend in college football, but if you've been watching my channel, you would not be surprised because I told you this was going to happen. I talked about it a lot last week about how we were now moving into the month of November, and you can expect chaos. You can expect upsets. The pressure starts to build for these teams. It happens every year. You know, it seemed like we were headed on a course, and everybody thought they knew, well, these were going to be the four teams. It kind of was all setting up, and I said, just throw all that away because it's about to get crazy, and that's exactly what happened. I also talked about last week how I was expecting LSU to upset Alabama. Also talked about how I expected Clemson to lose a game, and both of those things just happened. So the playoff race obviously has changed a lot from this past weekend, and that's the big thing for my takeaways. And like I said, the pressure, it starts to build when you see those first rankings, when you see where you are ranked. It can motivate teams, and it can add pressure to teams, and even go down the line a little bit. Look at Illinois, look at Syracuse, two teams that really have no experience being ranked in the college football playoff rankings. They go out and they lose, they get upset. I mean, it goes all the way down because you start to see, you know, like Illinois, hey, look where we're ranked. We have a chance to maybe do something. Maybe get to a New Year's Six bowl or something like that. Maybe that's plays into it. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's just the fact that some of these other teams have nothing to lose and they go out and they just play harder. You know, it just happens for whatever reason. It happens every year. Once we get to that month of November, once those first playoff rankings come out, we see upsets, and we saw them at the top, and we saw them again trickle down throughout the top 25. So let's get to my 5 takeaways. And we will start at number 1. Alabama now out of the college football playoff. LSU back from the dead. So if you watch my college football playoff eliminator video, I'll give you a spoiler alert here. LSU will be on a graphic that says back from the dead this week, because LSU now really, I think they control their own destiny to get to the college football playoff. If they can win out, they've got the win over Alabama. They have a nice win over Ole Miss and a chance to maybe knock off Georgia in the SEC championship. I don't really see them not getting in, especially now that Clemson has lost. LSU probably controls their own destiny, believe it or not, with 2 losses. And what's crazy is you have a lot of one-loss teams that do not control their own destiny. But yes, that's what happens when you play in the SEC. This LSU team they've just been getting better and better all year. I mean, go back to how they played early in the year. Losing to Florida State. Really probably should have lost to Auburn. I mean, they were not a great team early in the season, but they've gotten better and better and better. Both sides of the ball. Harold Perkins has become one of the best defensive players in the country as a true freshman. His emergence has really been big for them. Jaden Daniels and his legs, he makes this offense go, and this is just a really good football team. And for Alabama, they're not going to make the college football playoff. There is no chance. I mean, they're out of it. I mean, I guess you could argue that if LSU were to lose 2 games, because that's what would have to happen for Alabama to get to the SEC championship. So somehow LSU would have to lose to Arkansas and Texas A&M, and I do not see that happening. They would have to completely fall apart. So yeah, Alabama's out of it. This is a team that, you know, you're going to look back at this season, assuming they went out, and they were just one play away. One play away against Tennessee, one play against LSU, a team that was so close to being a playoff team that might not even make a New Year's Six bowl, because if you look at the way things could possibly play out, let's say Tennessee, they don't make it to the playoff. They could go to the Sugar Bowl. LSU could take a spot in the Orange Bowl. Alabama may not even make it to a New Year's Six bowl. There's only one at-large spot. So that's crazy to be potentially 2 plays away from an undefeated season and then not even make it to a New Year's Six bowl. This Alabama team, though, they've got their issues. We've seen it all year long. I could kind of, again, I just had a feeling, and I talked about it last week. I really felt like LSU was going to win this game, and some of those issues for Alabama, and some of the issues that LSU presents to Alabama, the fact that they have a good pass rush, the fact that they have a dual threat quarterback, home field advantage, all these things really just made me think that LSU was going to win this game, and that's exactly what happened. The Tigers possibly could make it to the college football playoff, as crazy as that sounds. And speaking of playoff, Clemson, they're probably out of the playoff now. They're getting absolutely demolished by Notre Dame. The offense for Clemson couldn't do anything in this game. This was just a poor performance by Clemson, but give Notre Dame credit. They have really fought. I mean, this is a team that's been getting better and better, just like LSU. And that's the thing with some of these teams. Some of them are getting better. Some of them are really not. I don't think Clemson's really getting much better, and Notre Dame is. And you can kind of talk about Alabama. We'll talk about Notre Dame. If they just take care of business against Marshall and against Stanford, this is a team that's in the playoff race. I mean, it's crazy how just a couple of things can completely change a season. So Notre Dame not going to be in the college football playoff race, and they're probably not going to make a New Year's Six bowl. But hey, they could possibly win out. They could go 9-3 and still have a pretty good season in year one under Marcus Freeman. And you saw that defense again just play really, really well in this game. For Clemson, the issues just continue at quarterback. DJ Uyunglele has just not been as good as I think a lot of people thought he might be. Some of the same issues that he had last year, and they just could not score points in this game early and got behind, and Notre Dame was able to take care of business. So Clemson, I think, is out of the playoff. I don't really see a chance for them to get in. It'll be interesting to see where the committee puts them. Now, they could do something crazy and drop them a couple spots, and then they still have a chance. But I think they're going to drop a good bit. I mean, you go and you lose by a lot to a 3-loss team. I don't see Clemson staying near that top 4. I think they're closer to 10 than they are 4. Well, we'll see. We'll see where the committee puts them. But if they put them where I think they're going to put them, I think Clemson's out of the playoff race unless something just absolutely crazy happens. All right, number 3, Georgia. They might be in a league of their own. And this was, I think, a takeaway from earlier in the year. Maybe earlier in the year I may have said this exact same thing. And yeah, we saw what happened against Kent State and against Missouri. And everyone's starting to say, well, Georgia's got issues. But if you go back and look at those games, and I talked about this last week, if you go back and look at those games, turnovers. And that is what has been a game changer in a lot of games this season. Turnovers can make such a big difference. And against Kent State, they had no chance of losing that game. They won by 3 scores. They had a couple of turnovers. Kent State had a fake punt they converted. I mean, it was just a wacky game. And then you look at the game against Missouri, they probably just weren't ready for that game. They had turnovers in that game as well. And Missouri is not a horrible team. I think at that point everyone thought, well, Missouri's awful. How do you play a close game? But Missouri has proven that they're a decent team this year. You know, they've been competitive with a lot of other decent teams. And so, you know, you take those 2 games out of the equation where Georgia obviously didn't play great. But look at their other games. Look at what they did to Oregon. Look at what they did to South Carolina. Look at what they did to Florida, despite the turnovers. I mean, just go down the list. This team has completely dominated every other game. I feel like they could have beat Tennessee by more. They really kind of took their foot off the gas there in the second half. They dominated this game. I know it was a 2-touchdown game, but they dominated. And it was the fact that they didn't even have to do anything special. Like their DBs just locked up these Tennessee wide receivers. As good as these Tennessee receivers have been, I mean, that is impressive, and it just shows you the recruiting that they've done, the talent that they have, the coaching that Kirby Smart and his staff have been able to do. And because of that, I just don't know if there's another team on Georgia's level, because Tennessee's a good football team. Oregon is a good football team. You know, you look at all these other teams, the question kind of becomes, well, Ohio State and Michigan, are they up there closer to Georgia, or are they closer to Tennessee and Oregon and Alabama and these other teams? And I don't really have the answer to that. I don't really know. I really kind of think Georgia might just be in a league of their own. They're the new Alabama. They are the team that plays that defense that is, and you know something, if you go back and look at Alabama, ever since Kirby Smart left Alabama, look at what their defenses have done. They seem like they've gotten worse and worse and worse. They've still had good defenses, but they're not as dominant on defense as they used to be. Georgia is now that team that flies around and they hit hard and they make everything so hard on an offense. And now you look at the offense, Todd Monken getting it done there. Very balanced. They're able to run the ball, throw the football. I just think Georgia might be a good bit ahead of everyone else. And that could possibly make for a boring playoff. They might win their playoff games easily. And we may not even have a close game with Georgia in the playoff this year. I think they might be that good. Now, I can't say that for sure. There's not enough to compare teams from different conferences. So Ohio State and Michigan, they might be right there. They might be just as good as Georgia, and we may have some great games, whoever winds up in the playoff. But I think Georgia has definitely proven that they are clearly above everyone else in the SEC, including Tennessee. And, then there's that next tier of Tennessee and Alabama and LSU. So Georgia, the front runner to win it all. And that's what I thought earlier in the year. I started to kind of doubt that a little bit, but now I'm back. I'm back on Georgia. I think this is the best team in the country, and I don't think it's really even that close. All right, number 4. Tennessee now in control of their own destiny. I believe they are. I believe if they go undefeated, they are in the college football playoff because of Clemson's loss. You look at if Clemson had not lost, I think there was a chance that TCU would have gone undefeated and not made the college football playoff. I think there was a chance that they would not have passed Tennessee. And then you could have had Clemson, winner of Ohio State, Michigan, Georgia. They could have finished at number 5, even though they would have been undefeated. I don't think that would have been right, but based off of where they were ranked, I think it possibly could have happened. But now TCU, and they survived against a pretty good Texas Tech team. I think they're in control. If they win out, they will be in. I don't see a scenario that would keep them out. So let's say they don't pass Tennessee. Even if they go undefeated, they don't pass Tennessee. Tennessee stays with their one loss in the playoff. Georgia makes it, winner of Ohio State, Michigan. TCU is going to be ahead of Oregon. They're going to be ahead of Clemson. And they're going to be ahead of the loser of the Ohio State-Michigan game. So, yes, TCU will make it if they win out. The question is going to be, what if they lose, say, to Texas on Saturday, which I think is very likely. Then they bounce back. They win the Big 12. Then will they get in? That'll be a debate for sure. What if we have a one-loss TCU, a one-loss, let's say Michigan or Ohio State, a one-loss Oregon, one-loss Clemson? Who gets in? We could have definitely a big debate there at the end of the season. But if they went out, they're in. Don't have to worry about any of that. And at number 5, again, all my takeaways are really about the playoff this week. Oregon's playoff path just got much bigger. Oregon now has a really good shot to get in the playoff if they win out. Whereas before last week, I don't think they did. I don't think that they weren't going to pass Clemson if Clemson would have won out. So you couldn't get past Clemson, couldn't get past, say, Georgia, Ohio State, maybe Tennessee. Now, if TCU does lose a game, I think Oregon probably jumps them, and Oregon could definitely get in at that number 4 spot. I don't think a lot of people want to see Georgia and Oregon play again, and you have to wonder about the committee. Are they really going to put that matchup in Atlanta, right, where they played earlier in the season when it wasn't even close? I personally would like to see the matchup. I think Oregon is much, much better than they were at that point. And I was even going back and watching that game. A lot of missed opportunities, a lot of just mistakes and missed tackles on defense for Oregon. That game could have easily been much, much closer. I still think Georgia clearly was the better team, and they would have won that game. But it would not have been a blowout if Oregon would have played good. So I think that is a definite possibility. It's really just intriguing to see what the committee is going to do once we see all these dominoes fall and see what it looks like at the end of the year. Because I think there's definitely going to be controversy. I don't think there's going to be a clear-cut top 4. But it could take care of itself. I talked about it last week. We don't usually have this many undefeated and one-loss teams. There are usually only about 4 teams that can have an argument. You're usually talking about a 5th team, maybe a 2-loss team with an argument to get in. And what if LSU does win the SEC? That is really going to make things interesting. I talked about TCU being in control. Well, if LSU wins the SEC, that could possibly bump TCU out, and we could get possibly 3 SEC teams in the college football playoff. So a lot of different scenarios that could play out. I'll be talking about my new predictions this week, my new playoff predictions. Going to give you my projections for what I think the college football playoff committee is going to do with the rankings this week. So make sure you watch for that video. Give me your takeaways from week 10 down in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more here on the SG1 Sports College Football Channel.